My best friend and I were at a family reunion on a ranch 150 miles from Sacramento, California. I was 25 years old. It was hot, over 100 degrees, with blue skies, and it was noon. The cowboys there were joking about us being ball players, and they challenged us to hit the ball over the property fence. So my friend and I hit a bunch of balls over the fence, a few hundred feet away. We both play professional baseball. I climbed the tall chain-link fence to retrieve the balls. I placed the palms of my hands on the top of the fence posts and put all my weight on them. Then I jumped from the top of the fence to the ground. The tops of the poles must have been super sharp because they cut my hands down to the bone. Thick, hot blood started pouring out fast from both hands. I knew I was in trouble. I couldn't return over the fence because my palms couldn't withstand any pressure. The people at the party weren't paying any attention to me, as I was far away from them and out of hearing range. I had to walk the perimeter of the fence line, and it took me 25 minutes to get back to the party. I hosed off my hands to see the damage. The cuts were deep and kept bleeding. I grabbed some clothes, duct taped my hands together, and sat on my truck tailgate. I was hoping the bleeding would stop in a minute and that I would heal in a few weeks. I wasn't too concerned since I have a very high pain tolerance and have broken more than 10 bones in my life. Within 10 minutes, everyone at the party noticed my hands duct taped together and saw the blood dripping out as well. I told them, "Don't worry, the bleeding will stop in a few minutes and I'll be fine. I'm tough." After the cloth became completely soaked with blood, we removed it to clean and treat the wound. It kept bleeding. We cleaned it, got a new cloth, and wrapped my hands separately in better bandages. Then everyone went back to talking, and I just sat there regretting that I had jumped the fence. I knew I needed stitches, but we were 3 hours from the hospital. I was just going to have to wait until after the reunion ended and we had returned home. I kept bleeding through the bandages. The pain was increasing, the swelling was increasing, and the bleeding continued. I still wasn't worried. I was convinced the bleeding would stop soon, and I'd heal in 4 to 6 weeks. I checked my watch and saw that over an hour had passed since I had cut my hands. All of a sudden, the most amazing feeling in the world hit me, starting at my feet. It rose through my legs and quickly took over my body. I jumped off the tailgate and said to my best friend, "Jason, something weird is happening, but whatever happens, don't worry, I'll be all right." Then it filled my whole body like I was drowning from the inside out. I was immediately sucked right out of my physical body, and from above, I watched it fall to the ground. I watched everyone panic and run over to my body lying in the dirt. Nobody knew what to do. I was quickly aware that they were worried about me, so I started yelling at them, "Hey, I'm right here!" Above them, about 7 feet in the air. "I'm right here. I'm fine. Hey, Jason. Hey!" Then I realized I had no arms, no legs, no body. I was floating above them. I was so frustrated, trying to communicate with them, while they were all very concerned with my lifeless body. I even grabbed my friend by his shoulders and tried to shake him, but it didn't work. I got scared because I knew what was happening. I was very aware. I was desperate to communicate. Then I slowly started floating away from the scene, so I panicked and produced a flash. I flashed at my friend Jason, and he looked up at me for a brief second. I could see my flash. It was brilliant blue and lasted 1 second. I continued to float away. I couldn't believe what was happening, yet I felt extremely well. I had to accept my death. I floated into the blue skies, then into darkness, which I thought was hell, where I saw bad spirits circling. I prayed that I would continue floating away from them and not stop where they were. Luckily, I continued floating upward, and white light began to take over everything. I floated toward the center of the light until it surrounded me, and there, I stopped floating. Then the voice came. It was a man's voice, very matter-of-fact. It said, "You have had an accident. It is not your time to be with me. I am sending you back." I attempted to utter a response and was immediately sent back into my body on Earth. I was aware I was in my body again, and I stood up, much to the surprise of everyone who had been looking down at me on the ground. I stood there, covered in dirt and blood, and I was happy. I immediately started saying, "You guys wouldn't believe where I just went." They said, "Sit down and calm down. You passed out, and you need to go to the hospital." I continued to try to tell them about the exciting adventure I had just had out of my body, and they just ignored me. They were all arguing over who was going to drive me the 150 miles to the hospital. Nobody was paying attention to me, and I got frustrated. I tried to walk around, and they kept putting their hands on me and telling me to sit down. I became frustrated that they weren't listening to me, and I wished I hadn't returned to Earth. I wished I had stayed up there with God. All of a sudden, I passed out again. This time, I was sucked right out of my body and floated away much faster than the first time. I quickly was in the white light again, and the voice returned. He said, "This is not to be toyed with. This is not drugs, sex, food, or anything to be played with. You have had an accident. You must return to Earth and help people. I am sending you back." Immediately, I was back in my body again. I stood up and smiled at everybody and told them, "Get off me. I'm fine. I just floated outside my body, and you guys don't even realize that you didn't see anything." They looked at me like I was crazy and told Jason to take me to the hospital right now. As we drove toward the hospital, for the 3 hours it took to get there, I told him all about what had happened to me. I told him how I had flashed at him and that he had looked up and seen me right at that moment. He didn't recall that moment. At the hospital, the doctor stitched me up. He also told me that I had passed out because I saw my blood. I disagreed and told him about my experience. He laughed and left the room. I am 100% convinced that what happened to me was real. It brought back a memory from my childhood when I split my head open on a playground and had a similar, yet different, out-of-body experience. In that experience, I floated next to the car that transported me to the hospital. I floated down the halls of the hospital until my mom arrived, and I joined her in the hospital room where they put my body. I then re-entered my body when the doctors placed something that burned inside the wound on my head. Up until this next out-of-body incident, I had no memory of this because I had only been 5 years old. These memories came back to me after my experience on the ranch. That does it for the first experience. Moving on to the second experience. This experience was sent in by Derek K. This story began around Christmas 2006 when my father called me in Brooklyn, where I was living at the time, to announce that he'd just been tested and it appeared that he has pancreatic cancer. He said, "If so, I have a 0% chance of survival. I'm going to die from this." Within the next couple of weeks, partly thanks to very understanding bosses whom I still love to this day, I flew to Indiana and became his permanent caretaker. I spent every moment with him, even watching the Indianapolis Colts win the Super Bowl, until his untimely death in mid-March 2007. He had decided only to take medication and no chemo and was preparing for his death. During this time, a few different Christian pastors and priests came by his home to read his last rites. Some evangelists also came by, 2 gentlemen who talked about Jesus and asked, "Do you accept him as your Lord and Savior?" To which my father modestly replied, "I do." In the early morning of mid-March, just after 8 a.m., several hours after I had lit his last cigar, which he thoroughly enjoyed doing the last several weeks of his life, my father passed quietly. He had motioned to be sat up while lying in bed. As I lifted him from his right side, his right-hand man till the end, with his lady friend on the other side, his body and head flopped forward, and he passed away peacefully. That moment, I'll never forget, because I was suddenly holding my lifeless father in front of me, but I could hardly recognize him. His soul was somewhere else. Just a few minutes later, an overwhelming sense of joy and jubilation overcame me, one that I've probably never felt since. I suddenly pumped my fist into the air and yelled, "You did it, Dad! You made it to the other side. I love you. I love you." Perhaps this action was only a preamble to something more significant soon to come. About 40 days later, pay attention to the number, as I think it's accurate, but I'm not entirely sure. I was sleeping in my Brooklyn loft, where I was sharing a bed with my wife. At 6:29 a.m., I was suddenly woken up by something, a disturbance I couldn't describe. So I sat at the edge of my bed, as my wife was still sleeping next to me, and asked myself, what was that? Why do I feel so strange? Since something had disturbed my sleep, although not in a scary way, I must say, I decided to get up and write some emails or work on whatever small projects I was doing at the time. Meanwhile, my wife got up and left for work, running a business we owned together. I then went back to sleep around 8:30 a.m. During this time, my dad suddenly appeared to me on my left side. I was on his right again, and he held my hand. I was taken out of my body and remember looking down at myself as I was sleeping on the bed. Wow, that's me, I see, I thought to myself. But more important was my dad to my left, who was smiling and looked great, healthy, about 50 years old with a handsome beard. I was so pleased and stunned as I looked down at his hand in mine. I could see the hair follicles and blood vessels on his right hand. What I remember most is that this loft had 3 huge windows, separated by about 10 feet of brick walls in between them. They all faced west, and a strong light was pouring into the room from a higher angle. Beams of light lit up the room. It was majestic and beautiful. He then told me 3 magnificent jokes, all of which were very funny and very clean. Not an off-color word or subject matter weighed them down, as if they were from a higher power with a great sense of humor. For the life of me, I can't remember the jokes per se, but I do know one was about bowling. Just think of it for a moment. 10 pins, 1 ball, 1 thrower, and the invisible force on the ball, or at a scorekeeper. That makes 13. Was it a joke from Jesus, I ask you? That is my profound belief. Then he told me he was very proud of me. I love you and always will, which made me cry as the love was almost too overwhelming for me to handle. Then he said he had to go. Soon after, he let go of my hand, and I was crying by this time, thinking it may be the last time I see him for a while. And I woke up back in my body, with tears running down my cheeks. Keep in mind, this was 2007. Nokias were the craze then, and iPhones probably didn't even exist yet. As I finally got up and thought over the things I had just seen, not dreamt, I noticed a light on my Nokia phone was blinking, which meant I had a message. Before continuing, you must know that my only sibling is a mentally and physically impaired older sister, who very rarely calls me. Only this time, I played my voicemail and heard, Derek, you've got to hear about this. Dad visited me in my sleep last night. Call me. I want to tell you about it. Not surprised, but rejoicing, I called her immediately and only said, tell me what happened. Well, he tickled my feet as I was sleeping, which he used to do while he was alive, and he climbed into bed next to me and held my hand. He told me 3 jokes. To which I replied, yeah? Do you remember them? She said, no, but they were very funny. And then what? I asked. What do you remember then? He said he was proud of me and that he loved me. Then he said he had to go. What you must know about my sister is she possesses a savant-like knowledge of numbers. If you tell her a phone number, she'll remember it for years. Or if she sees the time, she'll remember. So I asked, do you remember what time it was when you woke up? I do, she replied. It was 6:29 a.m. Everything is true, and I only wish I knew the exact day he visited me. But let's say it was indeed 40 days later. Sounds like a resurrection to me. That's it for these experiences. What did you think of the NDE and the after-death communication? Please let me know in the comment section below. Until the next video, be blessed.